edition of Spotlight. I am Chidima Mado. Today is World Health Mental Day. Today is World Mental Health Day. This year's theme is Mental Health for All, with its focus on investment and accessibility. And with me today is a mental health specialist and chairman, Nigeria Medical Association, in with its zone, Dr. Onyekachi Ugwuonye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, when you talk about mental health, people will think it's just those who are not okay mentally and walking around the street. Okay, with that, let's start. Let's know what mental health is.
Well, thank you for that question. It's actually a wonderful one to ask. Well, I may not be able to go straight to mental health without really calling our attention to what health is. Health is actually a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So if you understand the division of health has mental health in it, mental well-being, we'll go further to say actually that mental health is a state of well-being where an individual realizes his or her abilities or capabilities. This individual is able to cope with the normal stresses also told us.
Okay, how can mental instability or ill health be determined in a person?
Well, there are so many ways mental illnesses could actually be classified or determined, so to say, things we'll call the symptoms of mental health. Well, once you deviate from these definitions of mental health, you already have mental illness. For instance, if one is not able to cope with normal stresses of life, this person is not being productive and contributing meaningfully to the society. Even if the person fully dresses well and talks coherently, this person can actually be seen to lack mental health, invariably, some degree of mental illness. Experiences, like someone feeling depressed, is a common feeling that we all pass through from time to time if we encounter difficulties in our lives. When this level of this feeling depressed persists for some time and becomes a problem, impinges on this person's ability to function or contribute meaningfully to the society, you start talking about depression, not really being depressed at this point. You see, that feeling is a normal example of neurosis. Such things like phobias, anxiety, will feel anxious a whole lot of times, and they will have fear from time to time. But when it becomes out of the norm and becomes extraordinary, it becomes a problem, because it's now affecting this person's ability. These are neurotic illnesses. But we talk about psychosis, such things like somebody is hearing strange voices in clear consciousness that other people around the person doesn't hear, or maybe having this belief that the whole world is against him or her without obvious reason. You're not the world leader and everybody is against you, that kind of stuff. So these are the ways we can actually see from time to time. Different from, when you talk about mental illness, people usually see the frank psychotics, the vagrants on the street as the only people who have mental illness. They are actually the extremes, people that have not been cared for. The reason they are on the street is because there was no care given to them.
Okay, so in this case, is it is it ideal for someone who is being diagnosed of mental ill health to be isolated?
Well, when you say isolated, that was the practice in the olden days. I will take us, at least in Nigeria for instance, when we had asylum. The first was in Calabar and Lagos, 1903 and 1907 respectively. The practice then, what we have now that is encourages integration of people that have mental illness with the other members of the society, so people can actually be treated in their communities. So it is not ideal that when people have mental illness, they will be isolated. The theme for World Mental Health Day, which says mental health for all, greater investment, greater access. Before now, there is what is called MH gap, mental health gap, trying to look at the gap between those who have mental illnesses and those who actually access care invariably. It was discovered that there is actually a gap between those who need it and those who get it. And this is common in low and middle income countries, of which Nigeria is one of them. It was found that up to 80% gap between those who need it and those who get it. So there are strategies actually put forward to be able to do this. That's what this year's mental health theme came to tell us. Mental health for all. Greater investment, greater access. So what do we need to do? We need to invest more in mental health care so that we'll be able to get across to a whole lot of people who need it. There are about 4 basic things. Taking mental health services down to the communities, down to the health centers, health posts, general hospitals, close to the people in the communities. That's primary thing that needs to be done. And in that way, you actually train the health workers, nurses, who will be able to render some level of care for mental health issues before it gets too difficult to be referred to specialists, so to say. The next thing that should be done, especially in this time of pandemic, where people are encouraged not to, travel unnecessarily, avoid gathering when it is not necessary, is to do what is called telemedicine. Have a way of making it possible that people could access medical care, health care from hinterlands without actually coming to the hospital. And at the same time, they have what they could have gotten in the hospitals and get the care. If it is something that should be treated in the community, it will be done. If it's something that will need a specialist to interface with those healthcare workers in the community, it will be done as well. That's the next stage. The next thing that should be done is to be able to harness and make sure there is a collaboration between mental health services in the cities and those in the community, so there will be a bilateral way of referral system. You refer from general community to the city for things that could not be handled there. And when this person is stabilized, the patient is referred back, and there will be a to and fro communication between the healthcare workers at the level of the community and the specialists in the city to be able to stabilize and continue to maintain a stable mental health. And the next thing that the government should do is to invest a whole lot of funds to be able to, increase mental health awareness in the communities and reduce the stigma that people have, which prevents people from presenting themselves for assessment and possible care. These are a few that should be done. But if we also go further, if we look at medical care for mental health, mental illnesses are actually out of pocket. For instance, mental health is not included in National Health Insurance Scheme appropriately, but now is actually being incorporated a little by little. Then this mental health, but the bill has been in National Assembly for a very long time now. There are bottlenecks. We hope that the government should expedite actions and have these mental health laws passed. That's where the people that have mental health issues will have some right to access care, built at some level that other health conditions are actually treated. If you look at, for instance, the task force, National COVID Task Force that was formed by Mr. President, it took a long time before they could consider mental health as a component of that task force. Even when World Federation of Mental Health had actually told us that 450 million people in the world have mental health issues. That means, if you go further, they've also said that 1 out of every 4 will have mental illness in their lifetime. If we take that to Nigeria, that's 25%. Taking our population to be 200 million, that means that at least 50 million Nigerians will have mental health issues in their lifetime. And we are not thinking about what to do. We are not considering it very important. So there are a whole lot of things.
What are those things that improve the quality of mental health services?
Well, very important. I would say it is a collaborative effort to pass the mental health law. To gazette the bill is actually the responsibility of stakeholders in mental health. I give thumbs up to Association of Psychiatrists in Nigeria that have actually put up this bill and have followed it up. But you know, you need political power. You also need collaboration from several other sectors to be able to do this. This has passed first and second reading currently. And you know the National Assembly is very pivotal in accelerating this bill if they think it is quite important. Then when it is done, it also needs the executive power to give assent to this bill into a law. So beyond that, the general public have got some role to play, because if we agitate and find it important, we will draw it into the ears of our various representatives at the national level. Efforts are being made here and there, individual efforts, organizational efforts. Just like I said again, the association of these things are capital intensive. The government needs to actually either subsidize or encourage these things to be done. Despite all the efforts made, I must tell you that the effort is not near what is expected to be able to achieve this awareness. There's a place for stressors. Yes, we pass through stress in our daily lives, but some people are vulnerable. Some people are already at the edge of tipping over to the other side. When you increase stresses in their lives, you're most likely going to tip them over. Now, if you look at this pandemic, COVID-19, ravaging the globe, it has affected people in diverse ways. People have lost their jobs because of this COVID. People have lost their freedom because of this COVID. People have lost money because of this COVID. People have lost their lives because of this COVID. I know a whole lot of people who could not access health care during this pandemic because of fear of contacting COVID. These things have worsened situations. And again, when you look at it, you no longer have the freedom to associate as you used to. You know, there's what is called social network and social capital. These things have been abridged because of this COVID. So it impinges on the mental health of the nation, of the citizens of the country and globally. So worsening the situation for those that already have it and those who are at the verge of developing this mental illness. Even the so-called previously stable could actually tip off and have issues with mental health.
Okay. What an individual can play to maintain mental health, and how can we prevent from, getting all these mental illnesses?
And I think what people should first of all do is to understand that mental health is part of health, and that we should take care of our mental health. If we understand that, we'll make efforts to be able to reduce stresses in our lives as much as possible. That is what you owe yourself. What matters is not what comes to you, but the way you respond to it. You may not be able to change the circumstances that come to you, but your perception and appreciation of the situations is actually your responsibility to design the way you want it. So even in the midst of this pandemic, people should take it easy and understand that it has a lifespan beyond which we may get back to our real lives and things move on. Beyond that, people should also understand that you can assess mental health, mental care, if you have issues bordering on your mental health. Such things like becoming unnecessarily anxious without obvious reason, beyond others around you, becoming unnecessarily moody, feeling weak and losing interest in things that ordinarily would have been of joy to you. Then again, you start having strange experiences that you can't understand. Walking up to a mental health service center, like a psychiatric hospital or a psychiatric department of a teaching hospital, general hospital, as the case may be, does not make you a mentally ill patient. In fact, you're actually trying to prevent yourself from having mental illness if you take care of that. And beyond that, reduce the quest for things that you cannot get. There are basic things that once there is life, there is hope. Take it little at a time. The quest for enormous wealth and riches may actually be a big stressor that will be tipping people over to mental illnesses. These are basic things, and as much as possible, before now, what Africans were known for is our extended family relationship. It has its own therapeutic effect. When you have to check on your brothers, your sisters, your extended family members, you may never know that that person you're asking how you are today hasn't got that question in the last 48 hours. So it may actually be a thing of joy to say, I am fine. And remember that somebody cares. Yes, you can't go to see, but most people have phone numbers that you can call them, send messages, send someone to go and tell them whatever. You don't have to travel. So that way people feel connected and remain stable.
So, to spotlight with Dr. Onyekachi Ugwuonye. Sir, what are the complications of mental health?
Well, we could look at the complications in diverse ways. The economic complications, in the sense that somebody who has a mental illness that is not attended to will most likely not be productive. Person may not have unemployment, the financial stability, the person may have financial instability. So if you look at the economic parts, but beyond that, in terms of health, one common complication that is actually a danger, and more or less like I would say a disaster, is what is called suicide. Suicide has been linked a great lot to mental health, mental illnesses. That does not mean that everybody who commits suicide has mental illness, but up to 80% of those who commit suicide have got one form of mental illness or the other. And suicide is actually any act that's willfully done with an intention to end someone's life. That's actually suicide. And WHO and the World Federation of Mental Health have actually posited that every 40 seconds, one person dies by suicide. That is equivalent to about 800,000 per year. And this is said to be more than the number of people that die by war and homicide put together. So if you look at it, you understand that it's actually a disaster. And suicide is the second leading cause of death in people between 15 to 29 years of age. This is the youthful age you can think of. And when we have issues with our youth, you can imagine what the future of any nation is. And let us understand that for each completed suicide, there are about 20 attempted suicide cases. So when you have one completed case of suicide, you should understand that about 20 people have actually attempted suicide within that same time.
So you're saying that the high rate of mental ill health is between that 15 and 29 years of age?
No, I said suicide.
Okay.
Suicide. Now, if we look at mental health issues, for instance, mental health disorders, neurological disorders, substance use disorders, are actually said to contribute about 13 to 14% of the global burden of disease. And this age is actually an age that is ripe for substance abuse, also ripe for mental illnesses, and again, neurological problems. So, coupled with the fact that this is an age people are compulsive, people emulate what others do. That's what is called suicide pact. When suicide becomes fashionable, that many people agree to commit suicide at a time, at different points. So this is common at this age. People want to do what others are doing without really understanding it. So it is a problem. And if there's a death to suicide, it affects a whole lot of people. This person is a friend to a lot of people. This person is a child to some people, extended family relation to others, and belong to a whole lot of organizations, maybe schools, religious organizations. You see, many people are affected by one case of suicide. That is something that should be taken care of, and efforts made to stop it. Several other things we can talk of, even death by other means, maybe by if you look at somebody who has mental illness that has not been cared for, he's a vagrant on the streets. He becomes a risk to himself and others. Can run into a moving vehicle and lose a life. And when this happens, the person that actually hit this person won't go free. The police is there, and the court is also there. The law is there too. I mean, it's a problem. We should be able to look into it and prevent these complications, be taken care of, and efforts made to stop it. Several other things we can talk of, even death by other means, maybe by, if you look at somebody who has mental illness that has not been cared for, he's a vagrant on the streets. He becomes a risk to himself and others. Can run into a moving vehicle and lose a life. And when this happens, the person that actually hit this person won't go free. The police is there, and the court is also there. The law is there too. I mean, it's a problem. We should be able to look into it and prevent these complications of mental illness.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for coming to the show. All right.
Thank you.
Before we end the show today, I want you to take care of your health, take care of your mental health, avoid too much stress, and don't be too quick to achieve wealth. Alright, I'm still your host Chidimma Mado to come your way again with the next episode on Spotlight. Bye for now.